Good morning, welcome on my Amsterdam walk on a sunny morning, and I'm here almost on top of the NEMO building and downtown, well, a bit side of the downtown. This was the walk I had planned on in March 2020, but it never happened because of Corona. And I will not do it again with the group because they have a new permit system for guiding. So what I do now is take you on a video walk through Amsterdam East with a Jewish touch, and I'll try to make it as visible and clear, the stories, as it can be without you being here as my real life guests. Well, being in Amsterdam, and you can start the walk here near the NEMO. But if you look ahead, there is Central Station, so you could easily walk from there. And some buildings you will come across then, and it's called the Oosterdok Island, would be the first one, the Hilton Hotel. And it is a hotel with 550 rooms on the Oosterdok Island. And this island here on the right side is all artificial. It was built on wooden piles, because all the landline over here on the other side, that is the old seafront of Amsterdam, when this water was not fresh but salty seawater front. The Hilton Hotel, an expensive hotel of course, but it's also really nice to hop onto their rooftop bar. Great, splendid views, and coffee is not cheap, about €8, but then you get a free refill, and that might, well, for me it's worth the effort every now and then. Walking forward, you will see a few buildings, offices of TomTom. Here with the brown and the grey vertical column is the library. The Library of Amsterdam was built in 2008, and of course there's more libraries here, but this is the library. And that library has some lovely children's departments, including the Mouse House. It is a picture book as well, but the lady who made the Mouse House, she photographed like a dollhouse but for mice, and you can see that through the window. I'll show you it here on the photo, and it's really fun if everything is open and normal again to go and have a look at the Mouse House. Then the white building there and the cranes that you can see sticking up, that is the new office of Booking.com. The NEMO, you can see it here, the new metropolis, is a hands-on museum. It's all about nature, behavior, the laws of biology, science, and if you have not touched anything in this museum, they say you have not visited it well enough. This science museum is fun for kids but also for adults, and it sees lots of visitors per year. I'll show you a photo because this whole museum was made by Renzo Piano, and he is an Italian architect who designed this museum as a total, some say it looks like a ship, and it's not. It is a copy, a mirror of the car tunnel that goes underneath. And here you see the tunnel going under the water of the Oosterdok, and there is the building totally on top. The tunnel goes from Amsterdam Center to the Amsterdam North, and where the tunnel is 10 meters deep, that is where this museum will be 10 meters high, and so on. The tunnel, normally it's busy, it's not so busy now on a Sunday morning, but normally could take about 50,000 cars going through, 3 buses per minute. I'm not going to count, but there's already 1 and 2. Then it closes down, or it closes once a year for certain. That is during the Amsterdam or the Dam to Dam run from Amsterdam to Zaandam, and then all the runners go and disappear here in the tunnel, which is really fun. I've been fit one day to do it. Then also animals get lost, and I once found an antelope from the local zoo in here, and the tunnel is actually held down by 160 poles that pull it down towards the bottom, otherwise it starts floating. It has 150,000 electrical cables that all the way go up to the north tip of North Holland, and yeah, it's amazing how we can still work out to live with the water, because the cars go down the tunnel There's more tunnels, and then further down you have the ferries behind Central Station for the bikers and pedestrians, which are free as well to cross. No bridges, too much shipping going on, so that will be a nuisance. And being here on the NEMO, I'm here on the staircase, and it's all the way to the top will be 120 steps. The roof terrace itself, once the doors will be open, is really nice. Renzo Piano, he came from Italy with his mountains, and he said, well, Amsterdam, you are a one-dimensional city. You have no hills. So he wanted to have a lookout, a viewpoint for the local people and visitors. So he made this building 32 meters high, 120 steps, they go all up and down. If it's open, it's free. There's also a bar at the top. You don't have to enter the museum. And it is great to see the views. I'm only like not even halfway, and look behind me how lovely it looks. What you see there are the boats actually behind me, and those boats are the ones, most of you know that I'm also guiding bicycle holidays, 2-week bicycle holidays, and those are the boats here waiting for passengers at the moment. They would have been sailing normally, but these bike and boat holidays, they take groups of people. Downstairs you have little windows. There are the cabins with private bathroom, 2 beds. And then upstairs is the dining area, the deck. And what you do is you travel, in the morning you make your breakfast, you pack a lunch, then you cycle with the guide, or sometimes 2 guides. Come back at about 3, the boat is in a new location. Have your tea, have dinner on board, because there's a cook, and then go for a city walk in, let's say, Alkmaar or Haarlem. Sleep in your lovely cabin, you never pack and unpack, because it's your floating room, and it's really ideal. The boats are sitting idle now, and in the winter they always are, and then most of them are serving for bed and breakfast, and about 80 euros you would have a double room, and it's right at the doorstep of central Amsterdam, so that's wonderful. Something to pass on, and you can find them on booking.com next to their new being built office. What not many people know is that behind the NEMO, you have this museum harbour, and all these old boats are there, just quietly docked. It is a really quiet place. It's here since 1984, and these boats are here since if your boat is older than 50 years, you may put it here even as a guest. Their aim is to keep the boats sailing and keep them in good shape. You can also become a member, of course, by donating money, because they live off subsidies and donations, and the people that are member. And you can see that all these boats, many of them have these lee boards on the side, and I'll show them from close by. Well, here I am behind one of these old boats, and you see this enormous lee board on the side, and here the neighbor boat has the same. These boats were used to sailing in very shallow waters, and most of them were sailboats. Here you see the mast. And the sailboats had to go so many places that shallow waters were included, and they had no keel underneath. They're very flat. So they put one of the 2 sideboards, the lee board, the lee side down, in case they had to sail. And these were old cargo ships, and you can see the material of the sails is brown. And I only found out recently that we normally have white sails. You wonder why not everybody has brown sails. That they, if you would put away a sail that is white, it could go moldy. And in that sense it could tear really easily at a certain time after years. And the brown sails have been cooked like a tannery with tannin and some other products, turning them brown but make them last way longer, because they can't get the black dotty mold in them. A really good solution. And it's such a peaceful place here, so close to the downtown. This open air museum harbour has all these boats. They mostly have their information plaques right there. So they, you can tell yourself and also in English read what they are. Some people live on them. Family of bicycles. And the boats come from different regions. And these boats are amazing because in the old days when there would not be any wind, they couldn't sail. And if there would be no engine because they had no money or it was not the time for engines, how would they move? Well, they had to be pulled and or towed actually. Maybe you know that along many rivers, canals in Holland, you have these narrow, very narrow walkway paths, these trails. And these are the tow paths. If a family, the boat owners, would have a horse, the horse would tow the boat forward. But if there was no money, the man had to steer, be at the rudder, and the women would tow the boat. They'd like a harness on them, and in that way they could tow the boat, sometimes even kids. This cargo ship here at the end is a boat from Belgium. The little bridge is up, the owner is home. And look at the huge rudder, they could even put it down. And here you can see the little plaque, and I can show you the proof how sad history was. Here you see the women towing the ship. I've even seen in a museum in Belgium that they could also be knitting while walking. Then here at the top you see horses, so that would have been easier. Here next to a little lock it seems a small train, so it will be further up in time or more money. And here you see the road with a small trail that is often there still along the Vecht as well. Interesting life and interesting stories. The Museum Harbour of Amsterdam. Well, being here under the tip of NEMO, you can see it's a green copper building, and Renzo Piano, the architect, he wanted to make it blend in with the historical buildings on the site. Well, now we go back a little bit to, cross that little bridge. There's the Oosterdok Island again with the cranes. You can see the library next here. Voila, where is it? Where's my finger? Here. The library on the corner. Then in front of it with the white dot is the conservatory. And a new building on the corner. It's going to be huge. It's the new office of Booking.com. And except for being the office of Booking.com, it will also have quite some fancy glass apartments. I'll show you the photos while talking. And there will be restaurants. They have a diagonal triangular part. The corners, the walkways through there are hooking up with lines of streets. So the view, the site is all lined up. The architects make the interior that way that they say if you come in the building and work there, you feel more energized after a day of working. So the climate, the human well-being is a first aim for them. It will be totally glass and shiny, as you can see. And they did that by putting little fragments in the glass. So the shiny, glittery effect of water, that's all around here of course, will also be there in the windows. Amazing. It has a car park underneath. It will have place for 2,500 bicycles. So a real thing. It was the largest inner city project in Europe, and the architect said, well, we have to make everything on the size of a stamp, and it was, because it's a very tiny place to build. Then we see all this water here, and there you see another little bridge. The two smokestacks over there in the middle, those are the smokestacks, the ventilation pipes actually, of the tunnel going right here underneath me to the other side to north. In between you see Uur, that is Muur, and that's a climbing wall. That's the rock climbing place of Amsterdam Center. It is a nice place for people to come together and still learn to climb without us having rocks. the Dutch climbers do tend to go to weekends to the Belgian Ardennes or Germany, and for longer rock climbing holidays to the Alps or further down into the world. Then the building behind the boat, right here, that is the music building for lots of jazz kind of theatre performances. And the wavy one here in the middle is the cruise ship terminal. And the big cruise ships can be just as high as these two apartment blocks next to it. It's amazing when they come. If they come again, they would sail into inland all the way from IJmuiden, from the North Sea coast, and visit Amsterdam for the day and often leave again for the night. It's a glassy wave, a lovely building. The land that it's on, the land that Booking.com is on, the land the central station is on, is all made on wooden piles. If you can see here on the map, the old maps I can add, you see that the old town had just boats laid out in front of the waiting, anchored out or hooked up to the poles in front of the how do you say that? In front of the city, and there are the trees, that's the old landline. So when transportation was needed and the trains came up, then they started to make this new island to have the combination of water and train combined. And now this is a fancy, big inner city project with lots of money involved on this artificial island. This water is now fresh. It was a sea before. It was an inlet from the Zuiderzee, which is now the IJsselmeer, the big lake here in the middle. And boats could sail all the way up to Amsterdam. They had to go a long way around the tip of North Holland to come to Amsterdam, all the way around. It was okay until the Zuiderzee was so shallow that there were some sandbanks coming in here, and they had some invention to hover, or actually to carry ships over this hill. It was the island of Pampas, and we have an expression, to lay for Pampas is like you can't do anything anymore. But they made a ship camel, and the ship camel was like a little bit of a dry dock lifting system where boats could sail into, and they would be lifted over the hill, the sandbank, and move on to Amsterdam. And of course at a certain point the big ships had to stay away from the city. And especially if you talk about the East India Company in our 17th century, the Golden Age, those big boats finally ended up being in Texel Island, and that's where all the people would step on board before they set sail around South Africa towards the East Indies. This water is fresh because in 1832 or 72, they made locks already to close off Amsterdam to control the water level. And in 1932 they closed off the whole inner sea in the top of North Holland, connecting it with Friesland, that is the Afsluitdijk, the enclosure dam, in 1930 or 1932. And that made the whole lake into fresh water suddenly. Fresh water means control, means no more tidal effects, so it was much safer for everybody. Well, being here in a lovely, sunny, quiet morning part of Amsterdam, you can see the NEMO, where we were, the Booking.com office, and to the right of the museum harbour you see the trees and the buildings. This was an extension of Amsterdam in the days when behind me was the old landline, and they needed shipbuilding places. Amsterdam was the biggest harbour in the world at the end of the, in the 17th, 18th century. And they made these eastern islands, the Oostelijke Eilanden. And the Oostelijke Eilanden, they were there for the shipyards. They were making warships, unfortunately. And then you see next to that same island, the building here against the light. I'll show it from another angle. And that is the old shipping, it's a shipping museum today, but it used to be the arsenal, the supply of weapons, and that was easy because if the ships were built, they could easily supply them from the arsenal next door. And of course everything in the beginning was wood, At this whole premises, the shipyard here, they found out, they invented that ship camel to lift the boats. They invented the sextant, that is a little tool like shooting the stars, the angle, and see how you can navigate on the oceans. It didn't take a long time before everything was changing into iron, because the wars were getting heavier, the times developed, and they were making iron ships. It was still, I think, 1925-ish, and up to that time, well, after that time, the ships didn't fit in here anymore. The area was closed for shipbuilding and changed into a navy grounds for educations, and that lasted till I think even 2014, and only then the terrain was made public, which is now in the process. And the buildings you see here straight ahead are now creative offices, restaurants, and it's nice to sit there or on the terrace to have a different look, a nice new angle on the city. Then you see here in front of the old sailboat some area, and there are little steps into the water. They make that into open air swimming pool. The same water is right in front of me. But they're testing the water, and it takes 2 years for them to have an official testing, papers, and to confirm that it's good enough. It was not so far, but people swim anyway. And if you don't drink it and take a shower, I think you'll be fine. Then the big boat, that is the Amsterdam. And the Amsterdam is a copy of an 18th century ship. The real Amsterdam didn't have a long voyage. It already was stranded, almost you can say, on a sandbank near England. And that's how they could find the ship remains as well, because it sunk, and they could rebuild this. The Amsterdam is part of the Maritime Museum, which is in that building, and you can visit with your same ticket. And if you'd go like on a kids' holiday, they would have live actors, things are happening. I don't know if they shoot the cannons still, but it's very nice to see the quarters of the captain, see how tiny the rooms were of the normal people on board. The ship has been built in Lelystad, and there is a shipyard where they work with youngsters that want or need to learn a trade. And they have made already maybe 3 and a 4th one coming of these boats. They could sail, but not very much independently, so most of the time they are pulled, and they are used in events. Like this year we should have had in August, maybe not because of Corona, we should have had the Sail Amsterdam, and this will be very often then the leading ship to come in to the harbour and introduce the big sailboats, the tall ships from all over the world. If you talk about the Maritime Museum, and you can see it on the picture better than on this photo, that museum has been built, or the building itself as an arsenal, was made in 1656, already in 9 months' time. It's made of natural stone, which we don't have, and you can see on the photo it's a bit yellowish. And that maritime, or the arsenal in those days, Amsterdam was the largest harbour. They needed it, and this was the storage place. And already then, the building was very elaborate, because in the barrel vaults in the bottom, in the cellars, they could collect rainwater, which is then used to give to the big ships to set sail around the world and bring some water with them. A good fresh supply of water, because the canals were not so nice to drink from. And of course, up to a long time, this water was sold, so you could not take water from the outside here in Amsterdam. Then what you had as well was on the roof, they had a very innovative way of catching the water. There was a reservoir, and pipelines would bring it to any corner of the building in case there was a fire, so they could put the fire down. 17th century, pretty clever, I think. The museum now is beautiful. It has 6 centuries of history, beautiful books, very old maps. Like a modern museum, there's a lot to experience, not just to look. Nice is that the inner courtyard is open. They covered it with glass, but with a rib-vault structure. And if you come like on a winter day, at the end of the day, when it's getting darker, all the junctions, the intersections in these rib vaults have little lights, and if you would lay on your back on the square, it looks like a starry night. Great building. Your museum pass will take you in, and yeah, very nice location here with all this history of maritime and sailing, just how it almost should be. We're going to the land behind here, and that is going into the mainland. It is easy to walk up the steps here, and once we get upstairs, we need to get across, and the safest way is here on the right, where there are some traffic lights, and then we can make our way over to the street. It could be busy. Take care. Crossing. Well, being here at the other side, it is so nice and quiet. It feels like being back in Amsterdam. Old houses. People enjoy it. See these feet sticking out the window if you go back on the video. And on the other side, a larger building, and that one used to be an old sailors' place. That they would come back from the seas, they would find a home there. And if you cross, you see also a statue of a sailor standing there. It was a nice social thing, of course, to do for the sailors. A sailor is a schipper. Or schipper is actually an inland sailor, and a sailor is een zeeman, which is going on the outside oceans. But this is the Schippersgracht, and this canal is named after the skippers because they used to live in this area, and it is a lovely little place. What you will see as well here is this lovely, this beautiful cast iron bridge. And it is a 19th century bridge. This is a drawbridge because it's part of the route for the masts, the sailing boats with masts. So they have to be able to cross the city from the Amstel, and there's probably two ways, east and west, where the bridges can open. Otherwise you just have to have a low bridge. This can open, but as you remember, I think it was last summer or the summer before, it was so hot, then this material will expand a little and get stuck, so they have to keep it cool with water. And that's what happened. The city was locked for quite some days because the bridges could not open anymore, and this bridge is known to have the same issue. Then you see a nice entry gate, the Entrepot dock, and let's have a look over there. And before we cross the bridge to the Entrepot dock, there's a cafe on the corner, Scharrebier. And Scharrebier is also the name of this little bridge, or the cast iron bridge. And Scharrebier is beer that is not of very good value or quality, I have to say. And it was made and was good enough for the skippers that were here. Here you can see the word Scharrebier Sluis. And the old cafe then here on the corner reminds of those days. You hear the bells in the back. If we cross, we come in a very special area. If you see on the map, Amsterdam was small, of course. It started in the 12th, 13th century, and then it started to grow and grow and grow. What you can see is that it has been growing, and the fourth time, this area here in front of us was added. This area here, this street, maybe you can see, it would go down. If you walk here, you can feel it. And over there, the side street is a bit higher, the Hoogte Kadijk, and it's the Low Kadijk. And these dikes were there to protect the land. It used to be like a summer dike, which is the real dike was way behind me. Cattle could be grazing outside the dikes in summertime up till the summer dike, and that was this street. So it has been added to the city, and it is now a really beautiful green hidden corner of Amsterdam. What you can see then behind me is the Entrepot dock entry gate, and there's even a little bit further down. The Entrepot dock was made in, I think there's always been warehouses, and it was in after 1827 that there was a lot of competition going on with the trade and everything. And Amsterdam thought of something else. What if we just store products and only make people pay tax when they take it out of their storage? So they made a transit warehouse system that had to be guarded, otherwise they missed their tax payments, of course. And that is what happened while closing off the whole zone, is making this entry gate. And there you can see the warehouses, and we will walk up there. Before, we have this really old coffee house of the Volksbond. The coffee house is an old place. It's a very social place. It used to be a restaurant. It's closed at the moment. I don't know what's in there now. And it used to be, Amsterdam was booming, and there was always work. And if you could not find work, you were drinking your coffee here. And if you had work, it was not allowed to drink in your at your workplace. So after work, you would come here and still drink, and not only coffee. So this whole law on no drinking actually made these coffee houses, between brackets, very lively. This was also the place where the workers would collect their money, the little money back, the weekly payments. Old place, and yeah, lovely. It's a gorgeous area anyway. Very nice and quiet. We're going a bit further towards this Laagdekerdijk, and you'll see how green it is, and tell you more about these warehouses. 800 meters of warehouses. So we'll continue to walk here. I'll tell you about the front of the warehouses, and then we will come back and enter through this little in-between alley. I'll show you the first, I'll show you the front. It's amazing how extensive this whole system is. This was where you would have come out from the entry gate. Here you can see some, well, now beautiful, well, almost looks like workshops. But this is then the street, 800 meters long of warehouses. It will be gorgeous. Then we'll be coming out a bit further. I'll first take you to the entry here through the back. We'll be going through the backyard, and here you see the house number behind me. This is very close by the front where we've been walking through. These warehouses, they were not, well, at a certain point they were empty, and there were squatters. Happily they went out and they made them into social housing, most of it. At the end of the 800 meters there are apartments to buy, and they would go still up to today for about 600 for a small one, up to more than 1 million for a larger apartment. But here, and I think in all the cases, they have split up the front and the back, because otherwise you have a very deep house with no daylight or whatsoever in the middle. So I'll walk you through. What was interesting about the social housing here is that the first renters had to say in the choice of kitchen or bathroom, and the rents in those days would start from like 300, 400 guilders, which will be like half in euros. It started in 1984, social housing. I'll walk you through quietly. I don't think it's polite to talk there. And follow me. Here we go. We go and enter here under the guitar balcony. You see some glassy tiles. I guess they are for more light downstairs in the parking areas. You can go on forever, but we can go out and see there's still wooden beams from the old warehouse days, beginning of 19th century. And then we'll be back at the front. Here we are in the bike place, and here you see how deep the building actually was. And then you see also these glass tiles that we have seen in the floor. That makes a difference. You see? And it just goes on and on forever. The street here in the back, I'll show you because we won't be there anymore. This Laagdekerdijk, it has normal houses. And it is so green and so quiet and beautiful. Playground. Green. Green. A mixture of old and new. And if you would go further down this 800 meters, these places, they have first class view on Artis, the zoo, which is right here next to us. We're going to walk there, past the little bridge. And that's called the Nijlpaardbrug, which is the hippopotamus bridge. And that will bring us to the Plantage neighborhood and to the zoo. See you there. And before we cross the bridge, you can see the warehouses here. And this is a very nice one. Where these round windows were, there were the shutters, the doors, and they would open with a hoisting beam that is still up there. All the places to hoist up their products. And what is so nice about them, they all have a name. The next door one is Dina, Delfzijl. All the houses on this side have a city name in Holland or Belgium. And further down they have been called after the days and I think the months of the year. And here's Edam, Eindhoven, and a lovely coffee place further down. But they are lovely housing and so quiet. We're going to cross that little yellow Nijlpaardbrug. This Nijlpaardbrug will bring us to the Lastage area, and that region, as you can see on the map, was also part of this fourth extension of the city. And as you can see, you could kind of continue the lines of the canals, the main canals on the old side of Amsterdam, which is the Herengracht, the Keizersgracht, the Prinsengracht. But on the other side of the Amstel, where this extension took place, they have never had really the money and the aspirations to build all the houses for a very long time. These plots have been rented out for 20 years lease, and people made their gardens. And when housing was wanted, it was already end of the 19th century. So this is a lovely area, housing from the 19th century downtown, which is the only region of the city that way. But because it was all gardens, the zoo could settle down here, which is just here across the bridge. I can hear some animals. And the zoo was here, and the first park of Amsterdam. And here, these people here, on the warehouses further down the street. On the right is the zoo, Artis. And they will probably see the giraffes walk if they wake up in their beds. Great place. Well, coming off this hippo bridge, we enter this Lastage neighborhood. Almost all the street names, as you can see, have the word plantage in them, plantation, of all the green gardens that were here. And the yellow building in front of me is the building Plantjes, and maybe you see the yellow in top of it, the Jewish star. And we are now coming towards the area where there was the Jewish neighborhood. And as you can see on the map, all the black dots is where the Jewish people lived before the First World War, before the Second World War, and before 1940. And this was an area where lots of theaters were, where the Jewish population also went to see the cinema, the zoo, everything. The building next to here is the zoo. But first, Plantius, there used to be a house on that location by a Mr. Plantius, that's how they got the name. And when the Jewish people came to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam, because there was a lot of work, the first ones were already in the Netherlands in like 12th century. And that was, oh, that was funny. I was disturbed by a lady appearing here from the bushes with her doggy. I stayed here for 10-minute chat. But back to Plantius and the Jewish people that came for the first time in the 12th century to the south in Brabant. There was a little group. And then in the 16th century, the first Jewish people from Portugal and Spain came, which were the Sephardic Jews. And then a century later were like the the Jews from Germany area. And they had their own synagogues, they lived their own lives. They were allowed to be here, a lot of poverty, but also lots of wealth, because some of them were able to find a job that was not in the guild. They could not enter guilds that existed. So they started, among other things, diamond cutting. And there's still today 2 big diamond cutting places in Amsterdam. One nearby, Gassam, you can walk by, I'll tell you how to get there. And one man who had a lot of money, a diamond man, he financed most of this building of the Plantius. It was a music place, it was the singing group foundation. It could seat more than 1,000 people. And, it's a gorgeous building, of course. What you can see is it was built in 1876. People got together there. But then the war started, and before the war it was already sold to a garage company. And in the war, the garage it was a storage place for taxis. In that sense, it was a garage. The taxis, you can even see they could drive in and out from the round doors downstairs. But there was no petrol anymore, so there were horses and carriages, and the taxi company still kept running. Then in the war it was taken by the Nazi Germans in the end to store their products. After the war it was the police, the traffic police, they would tow their broken down vehicles of accidents in there. And now since, what is it, I think, so from the police, after that in 1999 it was changed into the Verzetsmuseum, which is called the Resistance Museum. It is so beautiful to be in there. It is beautiful in the sense that it is worthwhile, very interesting, and it's amazing what they show you. It's a very deep building, so you can see many, many stories, very well laid out. I was there a few months ago and they had an exhibition about the fashion during the war times. So it's not only Jewish people history, but also the resistance as a whole. This fashion was so intriguing. They made like dresses to baptize kids from parachute fabric of the parachutists that landed here in the war. The museum will hopefully soon open. Downstairs is also a restaurant, and that is under construction. The Plantius building, and from that we continue here to Artis. And Artis is slowly opening up since this is like the 5th day. A huge parking place. Next to it you can see and hear the birds. And there's a very beautiful entry. It's the very old zoo, and I'll tell you about it in a second. I'm sitting here next to the Artis entry. The light is against me, so it's hard to show you, but I'll have some photos ready. Artis is a wonderful zoo. It's now in the middle of Amsterdam, but then if you see the map with the layout, it was part of this beautiful garden area of the city. It started already as a zoo, and it's called Natura Artis Magistra, and in 1838. And when they started, they were only open for people that were a member, and that was 10 guilders a year. so there was not that much. It is the oldest in Holland and one of the oldest zoos in Europe. Then after 1851 they started opening up in September for people that were non-members, and it was only in 1920 they were open the whole year for everybody who paid an entry fee, of course. Then it went bad after their 100-year anniversary. There was hardly any money. 1939, and then you can guess the war was coming. And surprisingly, the zoo did really well during the wartime, and it has some magic stories almost to it. The zoo was important for people to have a little bit of time to pass as a green park, some entertainment. And of course, as you know, the Jewish people that lived here, and there were about 70,000 Jewish people in Amsterdam, they, in the beginning they could still be here, but then the Jewish people were forbidden to enter cafes, swimming pools, and also the zoo. Happily here they had a director. He was a Swiss man called Sunier, of Sunier in Dutch. And he was very good, of course, with his German speaking. He came from that area of Switzerland. And from 1941 in September, the Jewish people were not allowed anymore. And he made sure that the ones that had paid their membership got half their money back. And those were 335 people. And during the war, he has been hiding so many people here. Jewish people, but also young men that had to work in the war factories in Germany. Anybody, people from the resistance. He had people that employed here that all were really well. They were not betraying one another. All the way around the corner there is a back entry through the monkey quarters. And the man that worked there worked already in Artis for 52 years. And he let in young men and hid them in the attic. And you can see on the photo how they were sleeping there. And also one day he let a man in and he said, well, most of them were coming on the Monkey Island because it was surrounded with water. He put a plank over it, let the man enter and take the plank away, and the Germans would not realize that there could be people in there. But one of them was next to a gorilla who could look through a hole and almost gave away there was somebody in hiding because of this weird behavior. And this man said, well, you saved my life, but the cockroach ate half of my how do you call it? I don't know. Then, let me see. Sometimes people did get, one of the employees who was Jewish was taken away by the Germans, but he made Sunier, the director, made sure he was put on the list as being a very valuable person, and that saved the life of this man who ended up in Switzerland even during the war. In the wartime, it was hard to get food, of course, for the animals, and Sunier, maybe he saw it coming, but he had rented some place in freezing houses with 30,000 kilos of meat. And when it was not enough, there were animals that had to be slaughtered by emergency cases. Inundations were often used in our country to make sure the enemy didn't know where to walk or drive. But it sometimes happened that the pastures were flooded, that the animals drowned. So he would get those animals as well. So that was extra meat. Cats that went all wild and roamed around the streets. The huge snakes lived of those cats. People that brought in rats got 5 cents per rat. Children in the fall, they would collect acorns and beech nuts and horse chestnuts as food as well. Then there was a cemetery, the Eastern Cemetery, that had lots of branches, lots of wood and grass that could serve as hay. And a bit of a yucky story, but details are things that make people live through the war, and animals as well. It's like the hospitals, of course, life goes on as well, and children were born, and the afterbirth was given to the zoo. What the people could eat here was, there was a lot of supply, and there were grain storage in the attics. Rats were there. So in the end, people were eating bread, also with the rat droppings, but they were grateful, and they reminded that bread with the rat droppings was horrible, but it saved our lives. And when the people that were in hiding here, it was sometimes a few days, a week, months, and to realize after the war that a friend of theirs had been sitting maybe in another monkey rock than they were, and so close to each other, they didn't know. Although even sometimes during the daytime they would walk around the zoo, maybe pick up a wheelbarrow with some elephant dung and pretended they were working here. So they were out there with some German guards even, pretty scary, and in the evenings they would go back into hiding. Scary place, but they saved a lot of people. Electricity was also important, especially for the pump in the aquarium. And in the end, they even had illegal electricity. They got through the back door from some German places. That stopped just before the war ended, so they almost had a problem. 14 April, 5 May was the liberation in 1945. And what he had then, Sunier, was a few spare barrels of petrol in the attic, and there was enough to last through the liberation. And when the Canadians came, they gave the zoo here 120 liters of their petrol, and they could run the systems again. I think it's amazing how well the zoo has survived the war, but also made people help survive the war. They went into hiding here, and after the Second World War, they could restart pretty easily. People were so generous, huge gifts, even of 100,000 euros. And a few months later, the giraffes were shipped in from Africa, because the animals did survive, but not many new life gets born in zoos anyway. And they had to make kind of a restart program. And they did well. Artists, a great place that people could hide, and also a great place for locals still to have a moment of relaxation during the war days. From the entry, and the zoo is beautiful, planetarium, butterflies, all these animals. You have also Artis Microbia, and all the life seen through microscopes. Beautiful, your museum pass is valid. And then you have Café Plantage. If things open up again, all the cafes and restaurants, this is so huge, there might be place for coffee because you can sit apart. Nice terrace in the back. And then Plantage, actually the corner building there, I'm heading for, and that has a special story. Or actually, no, it's here already. You see the plaque, that's where the story is about. This story reminds of 27 March 1943, and the names listed here did something brave. There were 10 men that dressed up as policemen, and this building was then the city archives of everybody's name, birth certificates, marriage, you name it. So that building was important for the Nazi German occupation to know the whole city and to see where people are and who existed. What these 10 policemen, fake policemen, did is sedate the guards that were here, and they would then bring them to the zoo. They didn't kill them, and put explosives in the building, and the building did explode. The whole city archives kind of burned down. Then the fire department came. They were probably instructed because they added extra water, and well, the whole thing, as you can see on the photo, was gone. Unfortunately, these 10 men have been caught, maybe except for one, and they have been put well, to death, unfortunately. And the plaque remembers their names and their very well, brave action. A nice detail is that this plaque was designed by the only survivor, so there was a survivor there. And he was later on the director of the Stedelijk Museum, the City Museum with the modern arts, pretty close to the Rijksmuseum and the Van Gogh Museum. And that City Museum, where he was the director of, he started off with art for one of the richest Jewish families here, which was the Lopez Suazo family. Some of them were very rich, had lots of art, and they were the elite of the Sephardic Jews in the 19th century. So happily one man survived, and he had a beautiful job, and he made sure this plaque was put up here. We're coming to the Plantage Middelaan, and we're going to cross. And the building there with the turquoise posters is the one we're aiming for at the moment. This is the lovely building, lovely buildings we came from, the lovely street. crossing with the lights. This corner cafe was the place I had booked for a very relaxed coffee together, but of course not open now. So I'm doing without the coffee, and at the end I'll get a nice coffee to go, because that is possible. Here we are at the place with some very intriguing stories. It's hidden behind the tree, and it is certainly a story that should not be hidden, and I'll tell you what it is. It used to be built here in this green area with lots of how do you say, the theatres, the cinemas, the dancing halls. It was built in 1892, and it was the artist theatre. Now it's called the Hollandse Schouwburg, the Holland Theatre. But during the wartime, the Germans chose this location to gather all the persons, all the Jewish people that had to be put on transportation. And they got the help of a Jewish council. It was said that the Jewish people had to help themselves. It was a national council. They knew everything about the Jewish community, and they had to work with the Germans. They also helped people because they had entry, they could get to the bookings, they could get special recommendations for people that were valuable. And here in this theatre, which was not a theatre anymore, sadly enough, in those days, and that started in 1943, the deportation of the Jewish people in the Netherlands started in July 1942 till September 1943, so more than a year. And after that, people disappeared still, but that was more of betrayal when they were into hiding. In this place, the Hollandse Schouwburg, a Jewish man worked. He was from Cologne, and he was called Walter Suskind. Here you see him on the photo. And he happened to actually know the German, let's say officer that worked here as well, one of the guards, from his primary school, from his hometown. So they got along quite amiably, quite nice. And because he spoke German, he was trusted. And what he did, he could not help the world, but what he did was all the families that came in here that had to be put on transportation, he could take the youngest child to the other side of the road, and the buildings here. There was an orphanage, and I'll tell you about the orphanage in a second. And he said, I can only take your youngest child because I can change the bookings, I can change the list. The Germans don't know how many kids you had, but if all the kids go, they'll know. And some families could not let their kids go, and others thought, well, if we can give the youngest a chance to survive, we'll do. And in that way, they saved 600 children's lives. It's amazing. It almost gives me goosebumps. And Walter Suskind himself saw 107,000 Jews pass. And since there are less, 70,000 Jews here, maybe there were also men that had to work, or people from the resistance, from the underground works. Of these people, these 70,000 or the 107,000, only 78% came back. So that was horrible. From this camp, this is not the camp yet, this was the theatre, they were brought to the station of Muiderpoort, which is a smaller station and central station. From there on the train to Westerbork, that camp in Drenthe province in the northeast is still there, and a very interesting place to visit. And from Westerbork they stayed, it was a transition camp, and then it went on to Sobibor or Auschwitz or other horrible places. In Walter Suskind himself, he was also taken away in the end, and he did not survive the camps either. He passed away in February, I think 43 or 45, I think 43. Then if you would go in now, and the Hollandse Schouwburg is under reconstruction, because also the orphanage here on the other side will soon open up, is a Holocaust museum. When it's open, please do go in. It used to be free because it's a commemoration place, and the whole playroom in the back where the seats were is now open space. It is like an open outside garden with bricks. I'll walk there. It's so quiet on the Sunday morning. And alongside you will see all the names of the people listed. It is very tranquil. It is very worth going in there because it's a part of history. It makes you quiet, and here you can see how open it is. On the side there's walls of names. You can't see that at the moment. Outside also there's names. You can see still the structure of how the theatre was, but it's mostly a new effect, so to say. En here it says the theatre. Geen voorstelling van te maken. It's like you can't make a show of this. It was just horrible. Being here at the Hollandse Schouwburg, we can see the other side of the street. And some of the buildings were part of the children's orphanage, and that is another interesting story. So on the other side of the street opposite happened to be an orphanage, and during the war this was dedicated to be the place, the Nazis wanted that as well, to bring the kids that were younger than 12 and also orphans. And 5,000 kids, little break. 5,000 kids during the war passed through that orphanage. In between there was a school for teachers, to become a teacher, and their backyard has been used often to hide children. During the war, Henriette Pimentel, you see her on the photo, she was already a little bit older. She was the director, the head of the orphanage. And she made sure that a lot of children found a place to go into hiding. And they were smuggled out through the back. The trolley is right here in front of me. And when the trolley would come, one of the helpers there would go out with one or two babies under their coats. When the tram was there, here at the Hollandse Schouwburg, this side, they could not see people stepping out the door, certainly not with something under their coats. When the tram would drive away, they would walk along to the same side and disappear around the corner. And as said earlier, they saved 600 children's lives. They got work, they could help from students most of the time. Students found it quite easy to work with children as an underground resistance group, because if they would work with adult people, they would probably not be overpowering them in the sense of age. And the children, they would listen to them. Piet Meerburg, you see him on the photo, he was a very important person in this one. He worked at the railways in those days. He could travel easily, and in that sense he could easily bring children to or Friesland or Brabant. And when the children were going to Brabant, and 4 underground resistance groups were involved. So here comes the trolley. So you'll see, if I would have been a German guard, it would totally block the exit of the orphanage. It stops here, here's a stop, and they could just go into hiding. Oh, the tram didn't stop, there was nobody today. So there were 4 underground groups helping, and in Brabant there was Hanna van der Voort. She was 40-year-old, and she was how do you call the nurse that goes to the houses for ladies that just had the baby? Anyway, that was her profession, and she was, because of her profession, she knew so many families. And every now and then she would receive a telegram saying you will get 5 packages of surrogate coffee, so the fake coffee, and 4 packages of this fake substitute tea. Tea was girls, coffee was boys, and she knew what was coming then. In the beginning, she said that the kids were coming from Rotterdam. That had been bombed during the war, and they were orphans and needed a place to stay, so all went well. Before, actually, I forget a little stage, before the children were kind of organized, in an organized way, put to families in Friesland or in Brabant, they also put them on doorsteps. and certainly probably knew on what doorstep to put the baby or the child. And in that sense, the kids could be registered. People would then be entitled to have vouchers to buy food because money didn't do the job anymore. But the Germans they figured something was going on, so they decided that every new registration of a child was a Jewish child from then on. So that system didn't work, and then they started to smuggle the kids out of the city towards the south and the north of the country. This Hannah van der Voort, the lady, she survived the war and she saved 123 children. It's amazing. It's sadly enough that she was betrayed though, and she was in July 44, so in the south. That meant not far from liberation. She has been put to Auschwitz. She was tortured, didn't say a thing, and she did survive the war because she got help of the underground groups. They went over. One of the girls somehow hooked up or whatever with the officers and made sure Hannah got out of it, and she was disabled for the rest of her life. She survived. Some people of the resistance did survive, like Piet Meerburg himself. He started, these Jewish children that were with the families in Brabant, they had to live with the family, they went to school, they went to the Catholic Church with the family. So very interesting, the Jewish people, boys and girls, had to become half Catholic. And when the war was over, these families hardly wanted to give up their children. They were so fond of them, they were part of the family. And there was a big argument going on by the Jewish council that wanted to have these kids brought to Israel. I don't know the end details of that story. And Piet Meerburg, the main guy transporting all the children, he had enough and he stepped away from his position there, which he had in the war. He continued. He started to raise an organization of a student babysitter company here in Amsterdam. He started to make plays and musical one more plays, especially based on the diary of Anne Frank. Interesting people, interesting stories, and for some it ended well and for some it ended not so well. We continue that way, out of the Plantage Middenweg, and at the corner is a beautiful park, the Wertheim Park. I'm always very pleased with the beauty of this neighborhood. It's very fancy, elaborate building styles. It really showed the wealth of this Plantage neighborhood. On the other side you can see the ropes coming out of the hoisting beam. Probably people are moving in and out. Even these expensive buildings didn't have a proper door or a narrow, how do you say that? A narrow, wide enough staircase to bring up their products. And if it's narrow, you need to bring up your, beautiful with the doors. 2 doors, upstairs door and a downstairs door. And there you see the rope with the pulley. And I saw the other day a house that had a swing hang on that pulley. Maybe see it again. I would not go on it. On the corner with the purple light, there's Theatre de Smet. That was the name of owners after the war. But before the war this was a cinema. And the Jewish people were not forced to go to the cinema, but this was the only place for a long time that they were allowed to go to. It was first called Frascati, and here you see the Art Deco cinema for the Jewish population in the war and for everybody before the war. And here the gorgeous buildings. Love it when the people make their green gardens in front of these houses. We'll cross. This is welcoming. Won't sit on this little wall. I hear the green crossing into the Wertheim Park on the other side of the road. And on the left you see the Hortus Botanicus, the botanical gardens. And it's nice and quiet. Oh. Very elaborate entry of the Wertheim Park. And some more gorgeous houses over here. And a nice cafe, also closed. Well, welcome to Wertheim Park. And this is the only park in the Amsterdam city limits, the old city, because they needed every spot for people to live. And well, here there was still space, and they made this park in the 19th century. It's a quiet place. It's not huge, but it is important enough for the neighborhood. It was the money was given by a Jewish rich man who also gave money to the poor, and he was called Amsterdam Wertheim, hence the name of the park. The park actually was already a gift. The location was appointed by Napoleon when he was the King of Holland for a while. Very generous of Napoleon, but the city had to pay for it herself. And then this very rich Jewish man did bring up the finances. It was the Wertheim Park, as you can see, and in the war the Germans changed it to the Parktuin, the park garden. All the names in the neighborhood that were too Jewish, they changed them, and happily they have been changed back. In this quiet park, old trees. In front of us a huge tree, and if you walk over there, there's a monument. They had planned another monument commemorating to the war, but it was too large. It was something to walk through, and like little walls, like a maze, and that would take up so much space that they turned it down. And Jan Bolkers, he is a famous name in our book as literature, and also an artist. He made this monument, and it is called Nooit meer Auschwitz. Auschwitz, never again. And what you can see is the reflection, and the reflection is coming from broken glass, and that makes the sky being broken, like it will never be whole again. That is the idea. It was put here I think in the 70s and or 93. And every year still they have also commemoration here. And the Jewish people, when they come here, they have a special habit. They put stones on the monument, and it's an interesting little feature if you know that that is a Jewish tradition, that you can see it being done. Interesting monument. A lot of complaints that often it gets a bit too dirty and not well maintained, but it is certainly depicting what it is meant to say. I'm now behind the monument, and the park is used for different purposes. People sit here, dogs run around. On this side here there's now a tennis court, so it's even a place for sports, which is lovely in the middle of town. And then we come at the water edge, and that is a wonderful place. On a sunny day, the weather is getting warmer and warmer again, to have a little nap on the water side, on the banks of the canal. And this is then again the Schipperskanaal, the one with the cast iron bridge. And just a wonderful place to be. We'll exit the park and then pass the botanical gardens here, totally on the left. and continue the walk. Here's the other side of the waterway. Older and newer houses. Some modern architecture fits in, others don't. And further down there is that cast iron bridge. We'll go towards the botanical gardens. Just some gorgeous places. Exiting the park now. All the flowers and the green. And then we come to the botanical gardens on the other side. Welcome at the botanical gardens. The gardens have been here already since 1638, and those were then more like a medicinal garden for the plants and for the doctors. And nowadays, of course, it's for us. You can see here on the entry gate, lovely picture with the boat, the coat of arms of Amsterdam, and here as well the coat of arms of Amsterdam. The boat, probably because of all the trade, that's how they got all their new wise medicinal plants. And the coat of arms with the red, the black and the 3 white crosses. The red they often say is an explanation that it is the city. The black will be the river Amstel streaming through, and the 3 crosses might stand for the plague, the water and the fire, 3 disasters they had to deal with in the past. The Hortus Botanicus has lots of greenhouses, very special climates. I think they have like 6 climates, 7 climate zones they represent. Butterfly garden, they're just beautiful places to visit. In the old orangerie, they have their coffee place, the Hortus Café. And it's a little green pearl in the downtown. What they have is more than 4,000 plants. You could enter here, of course, but you have to pay a fee, and hopefully soon they open up again after the corona lockdown. Interesting is that they, of course, need a lot of heat for their greenhouses. And not too long ago, they have made a deal with the Hermitage, which is a museum next door, that has too much heat. They made tubes, and now the heat that is collected there is used here in the greenhouses. And it's nice. It took a while to get all these pipelines done because they had to go under a metro tunnel. They had to get permission from the government, the local government. They had to get permission from the metro people, from the people that owned the metro trains, and it just went on and on. And finally, after 2009, it happened in 2016. And this way, with the heat, they save gas here in the Hortus Botanicus. That would be the equivalent of gas usage for 54 houses. And also the energy use that they are saving now is enough and comparable to 60 houses. So that makes up to almost 13,000 trees that would be with carbon dioxide they change. It will never be an energy neutral building because it's just too old. Also what is nice is this place, the Botanical Gardens, the Hermitage, the Tropical Museum, the NEMO, the Maritime Museum, Carré, which is a theatre. They all have made a deal that all their garbage is collected by an electrical boat, and very quietly once a week. And that saves garbage trucks driving around in this neighborhood, and not one garbage truck. It saves them 45 garbage trucks driving through the Plantage neighborhood. So that is a very well planned, thought of idea. Far away you see the Zuiderkerk, the Southern Church, and the Hortus Botanicus. And we're continuing now. Oh, and here, if you cross the bridge, like the second house from the corner has a swing hanging off from the roof. It's funny. I'll show you. There's lots of ways to walk. There you see some of the greenhouses. We have to go there too, but I first like to show you another special place of Jewish history. It's always nice when you're walking, but it's so important to look up now and then. Not only because the houses are beautiful, but here you see the hoisting beams. And this house really, truly has a swing. I hope it's a joke. We're passing the hortus on the side here, on the other side of the water, and you see more than 375 years old. Very old botanical gardens, very important it has been. Like the tulip had been brought over from the mountains of Kazakhstan or Turkey, and they have these wild species still. But you can see how far the tulips have been developed since then. Higher stems, different colors, because the tulips were very mini. And maybe you heard about tulip mania in this golden age of us here in the Netherlands, or especially in the West, in Holland. There has been a lot of trading going on, almost gambling it was, with the tulips. And what people would do is they would buy tulip bulbs, and it could be the value of like the equivalent of a canal house. So you talk about hundreds, in these days hundreds of thousands of euros. They had books painted, every tulip, like it's a little catalogue you could buy from, and you never knew what came out of the tulip bulb. It was always a surprise. And the ones that were so expensive were the tulips with a stripey on them. Let's say a white tulip with a red stripe. And it was hard to get, like the new baby tulips would not necessarily have the same. But people were going mad for it, and the government had to stop it because it's going out of hand. But what happened, maybe you heard already, the white tulips with these red stripes, or other stripy tulips that were so rare, they had a disease that made them so unique. And I know a place here as well now in the tulip area, and when they go through the fields they have to spot sick tulips, and guess what? Those are the tulips with the stripey in them. And if you want a field of yellow tulips, to sell them as yellow tulips, you don't want yellow tulips with a red stripe. They take them all out, and the lady says that is what happens, but I'm very happy because in a vase they still look beautiful. Another quiet place here. We continue to walk, and oh, lovely houses. You see this black house is slightly tilting. It comes a bit more forward than the rest, and many houses in Amsterdam have been built that way, or in Holland. What the thing is that often, especially if you see the bricks on the side, here I can't, if they would be straight horizontal, then the house has been built that way. And it meant to hang forward, because when you hoist up your products, you don't smack in your windows, and the rope hangs straight down. Also, the rainwater doesn't drip too much over the stones in the mortar. It could drip down on the street more easily, so less damage. And the aesthetical reason that if you stand down here, you see so much more. On the corner, the house here has a little mirror, and those are the spies. So when I would ring the door, they could really see me and decide if they want to open or not open the door. And way cheaper than video cameras, the spies, and yeah, they work, and it's nice and cheap. Going to the square around the corner, and it's the heart of the Jewish synagogues. Entering the Jonas Daniel Meijerplein. During the war, this was called the Houtplein, the wood square. And in the early days, in the Golden Age, wood was imported to Amsterdam from Deventer. And this is where the wood was sold. And Jonas Daniel Meijer is a Jewish name. It came back happily after the Second World War. Space, this part of the Jewish area has changed so much. There were so many more old buildings, there were canals, and the big roads for the cars and modern buildings changed a lot, but many things are still here. And one of them is here on the side, the Portuguese synagogue. It's a very high one. There are a few synagogues in here. This one is still, you can visit it with your card from the Jewish Museum, also valid with your museum pass. And this synagogue is still looking like a synagogue and has an interesting library. And on the other side, you can see the Jewish Historical Museum. I think it's under construction now. It looks also very closed. And that one consists of 4 smaller synagogues, and it explains everything about the Jewish history. What you can see here is a very important statue. It's made by Mari Andriessen, a sculptor from Haarlem. And this is the dokwerker. And the dokwerker is the dock worker. Flowers. And he symbolizes the small man that stood up against the big power. It symbolizes the February strike of 1941. It was 25 February, and people did not do a lot. The war, we were occupied, didn't want to be, but it happened, and things changed, and things changed slowly, but at this point happily people started to realize and started to wake up, and they started to strike. That meant that it was organized, which was difficult and hard and dangerous. People would not drive out the trolleys and trams, offices would be closed, people from the docks stopped working, and actually this strike was started because quite a few men there were razzias. Hundreds of Jews were taken away, Jewish men. So people finally were aware what was happening and started to revolt. This strike lasted 2 days. It spread from Amsterdam to Zaandam, Haarlem, Weesp, also Hilversum. Hilversum, there was a big strike, and there was the building from Philips where they made signaling machines, seintoestellen. And they had a march in Hilversum, because I come from Hilversum, my hometown. They had about 10,000 people in the street. Of course it was stopped, and the cities that had strikes were punished badly with heavy fines. And many of the people here, they got caught, and it didn't end well. During this strike and the ending, there were 9 people killed, 24 wounded. Many were taken as a prisoner. And in 1952, this dock worker stood up. Already since 1946, there have been commemorations after the war, so pretty quick, 1 year after the war. And still yearly, as you can see, the flowers. Probably it was on May 5th, May 4th, the commemoration of the death. That this place is still valuable, and people come here. A small man stepping up to the big world. From the statue of Mari Andriessen, of the dock worker, here behind me, we walk back towards the botanical garden where we can cross the street. We cross the bridge and make our way to the backyard of the Hermitage. And I'll continue my talk over there. Here you can see the bridge we need to cross. And once crossed, you can go with the little stairs underneath, and we don't have to cross the dangerous road. Here you can see the Johannes Daniel Meijerplein, where we came from. Cross the bridge, and here you can go down and go with a little walking tunnel under the road, because crossing without pedestrian place is a bit dangerous. So let's not do that. Walking slightly back towards this glass house, the greenhouse of the botanical gardens. It's interesting in a city that people enjoy the outdoors and use every park space they can get for sports and other activities. So here we walk into the tunnel. Mind pedestrians. You can also take the stairs right here on the left and see you on the other side. Did you hear that? That was the underground. Just here under is the air place, and the tunnel was already as well the entry place of the metro, the underground place. There's construction going on, but there's an entry to the garden. Yeah, here we came out of the tunnel. If you can go in there, you may. I'm going to take the next place because that will be open, and we're going to enter the Hoftuin, the Hofgarden. Interesting how the world works now. We order here, and I think pickup is even around the corner. But hey, it works for me. I see already a lovely spot to sit, and I can not only buy coffee, but I can even buy a cake with it. So it's almost like real, and I just act like all 15 or 20 of you are here with me. Isn't that nice? I love it. See you later. Well, that was the little chair for my little coffee break. And here is the Hermitage. And we exit the lovely garden right there in the corner next to the white kind of veranda balcony of the house. There's an exit towards the canals. See you there. Beautiful place, huh? Not too bad to be in a nursing home in the 17th or 18th century and have this as your backyard. And the front is along the river Amstel. Here we go, next to this white balcony. There's another exit, and we'll see the canal. This is where we came out of the Hoftuin, the garden, and this is the back entry of the Hermitage. It is then an old nursery, and it's a large building. I can show you also on an aerial photo, and here it's nice because it is here on the poster. And here you can see even on the front there is a little date above the door. It says 1681 Diaconie, which was the good cause, the foundation of the church, and old ladies' home, oude vrouwenhuis. Beautiful location. It was well, something that happened often, the taking care of the older people. And it was a nursing home from 1681 till 1999. So it was a fairly long time. And the last people left only in 2007. It was already bought then by the Hermitage that opened in 2004. And it probably opened up in different stages. And the Hermitage is a dependance, so to say, of the Hermitage in St. Petersburg. They always have something on exhibition from St. Petersburg, and St. Petersburg at its turn has Amsterdam as a city layout, did copy that for their city plan with all the canals, the islands, the bridges, so there's a lot of up and down trading and swapping plans, ideas and architecture. And now art. What you see in the Hermitage is the 17th century group portraits, like the Nachtwacht, the Night Watch. Although that one, of course, is not here, but the whole is impressive, and the audio tours are very wonderful. The guards are very friendly as well. They explain things, especially if you walk around with children. I experienced, and if you speak Dutch, the Dutch audio tour is funny. One of the guys, I think he's like or stand-up comedian, or and the way he explains things makes it anything but dull. Then what is also unique is that in 2016, and that is the site over there, is a workplace for mentally handicapped people, and they have their permanent exhibition place in the Hermitage. So wonderful to give them a space to exhibit and show their productions. Then this canal is called the Nieuwe Herengracht, and the little bow bridge gives way to the Amstel River. The Amstel River is, if you see the map like from above, the river coming from the backland is about 32 kilometers long, and it is a stream that is, the water is given by the peat areas in the back, like you all, well, in my area where we live, Loosdrecht, Brooklyn, near the Vecht River, those have lots of lakes. There used to be peat areas, and all that peat, when it's drying up a bit, or when there's rain or the overflow of water, well, the Amstel River is one of these collection waters. And the Amstel River, just came into the sea at this location, in the old days when there was still a sea in Amsterdam, or at the place where Central Station is. And around, people started to live on dikes. Around 1200, 1300s, they made a dam in the Amstel, and then Amsterdam started to become a fact. And the Amstel River is still going through the city. I hear people say, I think that there's still tunnels underneath the streets that continue the water towards the Central Station. And it is a beautiful artery of Amsterdam. Across the River Amstel from here, that is the Herengracht, the Keizersgracht, the Prinsengracht, all those old fancy houses of the Golden Age, rich and wealthy merchants. And then it was this site, the Nieuwe Herengracht, the new Keizersgracht, that had to wait for building for a long time. That's why there were so many green places, the plantation, the plantage neighborhood, the hortus, the zoo, and well, the building started a bit later. And on the other side here, you see 1733 on the other side. This was part of the Jewish area, and actually it was a private idea from people living here that they made this site into the shadow wall. And what they mean with that is this, that in the pavement you see the names of people that lived on number 26 opposite. And these were people, Jewish people, that were taken away. You can see how young they were, going to Sobibor, to Auschwitz. And if you are interested, schaduwkade.nl will tell you more. And it's not only 26, it goes on for the whole side. And same. A few more over there. It looks a bit like the tumbling stones we have in many of the Dutch towns now, in front of houses where Jewish people lived in the war and that also were taken away. Here's a little plaque, the shadow wall, and it does tell you that over 200 residents lived here and they were murdered because they were Jewish. 2013 already this was started as an initiative of these residents, and I only learned a year ago about it. Just a little quiet corner, as you can sense yourself, that you don't come too easily, because the Hermitage is a large building with an inner courtyard, and if I was here, I walked in through the front entry and exited through the back and went straight to the garden and well, have a lunch or a coffee at Dignita. And this I always passed. But intriguing history, beautiful quiet place to commemorate these moments. And it is all about the houses then on the other side. What you see as well are the houseboats. It was after the Second World War that there was a shortage of housing, and in the end you see the regular old freighter boats, so to say. Iron hulls, beautiful to live on these ships, but insulation zero, of course. And they need to go to the shipyard every 5-ish years for maintenance. But the square ones, they are often built on concrete floating blocks, and they can stay forever. And after the war, there was a shortage, so they said, oh fine, if you find yourself a house, a boat, fine, stay there. And that has changed. Happily, they're all hooked up to the sewage system, that is a plus. And the boats now, they are not the best. I see here opposite me. And they will not cost so much. If you have a simple one like this built, $150,000 euros. But the place, that is probably leased. Sometimes you own it, but that could make the price go up to 400, 500, 600,000. So it is a wanted product. It is lovely to live near the water with the reflection, but some canals are a bit too busy in my opinion. Some of them are B&Bs, if you want to experience it once. Might be fun. And yeah, houseboats are part of Amsterdam and are part of the whole country as a fact. Hopping over to the Amstel River. Here's the Nieuwe Herengracht, Nieuwe Keizersgracht, sorry, where we just came from. And one story more is that on this canal, on number 33, so that's way beyond the other bridge, there was a hidden synagogue. So in the war, there were so many Jewish people into hiding that somehow they still had the gathering place. And that is where the Jewish from Portugal, Spain, the Sephardic, the Ashkenazi, the Polish Jews, all were one Jewish family. And after the war, they split up and went back to their own synagogues. At the moment, though, there's 20,000 to 30,000 Jews living here again, and most of them are in Amsterdam South. Here you see the front side of the Hermitage, the Stopera. There's the old canals, the rich houses on the other side, and this is the River Amstel, and the white bridge is the Skinny Bridge. The Skinny Bridge is probably the Magere Brug, is probably the most famous bridge of Amsterdam. It is a beautiful drawbridge, and it is called the Skinny Bridge because it's narrow. I know more narrow bridges in Amsterdam, but this one has the name, and it is actually the Church Street Bridge, the Kerkstraatbrug, because it gives way straight into a small area, a small street, the Kerkstraat, the Church Street. And that little Church Street is interesting because the houses on the main canal were from the rich merchant families. They had large backyards. In the backyard they had the carriage house, and when the carriage had to come and pick them up, they would drive out from the back, the Kerkstraat, and then turn around the corner and go and pick them up on the front. So there's a place getting out their backyards and the servants' exits. Then what you see as well beyond is a sluice complex. These sluices can still be closed and are still closed because the River Amstel comes in that way. And at a certain point they are flushing, especially summers, they flush the River Amstel to keep the waters clean and not too stagnant. And if they close it up there, they can pump in water in the east. And since it's like half an onion ring of canals, if you pump it and the water can't escape, then you get a cleaner system of the water here. In the early days, the River Amstel was also very important because the canal water was horrible. It was dangerous to drink, beer was safer, and the water they used was mostly coming from the area near the Vecht. And that is again not so far from Hilversum. They needed boats to go there, and also in winter they wanted to guarantee that this water supply was going on. So if you see this very old etching in color, you see that the boats are led the way by an icebreaker. And this icebreaker boat, had all these little boats behind them, bringing in this fresh water. Further down here, upstream the River Amstel, you can still see a cafe that's called the Icebreaker, where the boat used to be docked. It's like a music cafe, and breaking that ice was important. For the rest, you see people enjoying their time on the ice, as people are now enjoying time on the water. On the other side, you see it subbing. The boats as well, if you see that on the picture, on the etching, you see that there's horses also involved pulling the boats. Yeah, not everybody had engine, not a sail, no wind, then you needed something to be going forward. Beautiful day, and we're going towards this side of the front of the Hermitage. Interesting as well, if you visit ever, is going into the 3D visual show of the existence of Amsterdam, and it's such a wide room with displays and videos popping up, the growth of the map. It is very impressive, and I think you should see it twice almost. It's only a few minutes, and then you can see the whole of it, because you can't look left and right at the same time. Well, here you can see all these people living on the houseboats. They're official, they have their mailboxes. Welcome in Amsterdam, doorstep, the flowers. And these are these iron hull boats I talked about that need to go to the shipyard every now and then. Rust can pop up, as you see, any second. And but it has such a charm. Boats are rafted up together. It's a law officially, probably not for houseboats though, that if you sail, you can raft along. And also with these tourist boats I work with, sometimes in some towns we are rafted up with 4 boats, which is interesting if you have people going off and on and off with their bicycles. Great place along the Amstel, people working out. And this is then the front entry. Spacious room, which was used in the other days as a little chapel area. And here normally the entry is open downstairs, makes you walk into the garden. You can freely walk through and also walk out, because you don't need to pay a ticket to go through the building. We continue our way towards the Stopera. On our way walking towards the Stopera, which is the white big building behind the bridge, you see this lovely part of the Amstel River. And the bridge is called the Blaubrug, the Blue Bridge, and it's a copy of one of the bridges over the Seine in Paris. I think I'll always come here on a Sunday morning. Really nice. And here a little fellow making a nest. City birds, or water coots. Yeah, I'll go away. When walking around in town and you think you get lost, there's lots of little signs for walking pedestrians to find your way. And now we're going towards the Stadhuis Opera, point 200, so 200 meters we can make that. The little house you see here is for the bridge tender. And if you would come from the Amstel, you can clearly see yourself this blue bridge doesn't open. So when you have a boat with a mast traveling through the country, there's a water map you can pick up at like ANWB, like AAA. And they will show you some routes, not many, with a high mast boat to travel north or south. And if you come, you would go on the Amstel and then turn a right here. And this is where you see a drawbridge. That bridge further down can open. And you see the botanical gardens. The traffic lights you see at here you can see one as well. On the other side is probably a bit more clear. A red light on the top means you have to wait, the bridge is not open. 2 red lights, bottom and top, means not operating. Winter schedule, weekend, evening, whatever. And if it's green, of course, then you're free to go and cross the bridge. And this is the little place, the house, where the bridge guy would enter and work on the buttons. And if he's still doing it the old way, he would bike or get his scooter up to the next bridge and open the bridge there for you. The bridge here, you can see, it used to be operated with an old wooden wheel to turn it open, and nowadays happily they have a powered system that opens the bridge. The big chains, the wide tops for the counterweight. You see the chain dangling from there, the little hook that would normally hook into the ground and keep the bridge open. Interesting enough, this is called the Walter Suskind Bridge. I hope you remember the man that, well, could only help, but did help the young kids from the theatre to go towards the other side, to the orphanage, to go into shelter. And here you see Walter Suskind. He was born in Ludenscheid on 29 October 1906, and he passed away after an evacuation in Auschwitz, January, February 45. So probably he passed away then. I don't know when Auschwitz was liberated. Maybe that was at this day, because evacuation says maybe enough. And then he, well, with big danger to his own life, he helped many Jewish citizens to go into hiding and not to be deported. The Walter Suskind Bridge. We're crossing towards that area. Be careful wherever you walk, of course, for bikes and cars, etc. You see an old advertisement, even a prolonged one till 3 May. That didn't have a lot of result for people because we couldn't enter anyway. But when I said they always have an exhibition from the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, this was the last one. Maybe it still is there. It was all the jewels, not all, jewelry from the Hermitage from St. Petersburg in the old days. On top of the blue bridge now, I'm looking at the skinny bridge on the other side, and this blue bridge has this really beautiful crowns on top of it. Behind me, over the Amstel far away, you see the skinny bridge, and I'm looking at the moment at the Stopera. And the Stopera is a building that is a combination of City Hall and Opera. ST of Stopera is Stadhuis, Town Hall, and Opera is the Opera. And this Stopera building is at the location, and I can show you the map, how it was. It used to be a corner, a square, kind of almost floodable island with canals, with well, then lots of water, and also houses. The Jewish area, and in the Second World War, houses were empty, right? The people were gone. And the last winter, the south was already liberated of the country, but the north not, and they had the starvation winter. I'll stop because I heard a siren. All right. And this location was a Jewish neighborhood that was totally empty, destroyed. The wood was taken out because of this starvation winter. People well, took the wood for burning their stoves and their heaters at home. Then they decided to not bring back this neighborhood, but use this for new building, and that is when this City Hall and Opera came into the picture. Our town hall needed more space, and it was a competition, like for people to send in designs, and it was an Austrian architect who won, and this building got there. But at the place there was well, many Jewish histories, but also I'll show you a little trace where there was a boys' orphanage. If you would not go to the Stopera, but into the alley across, right there, then you'll be there at the Jewish Historical Museum. They are rebuilding at the moment. If it's open and without going in, you can already peek into the windows. Beautiful view. And in front of there you have a monument with a railway in the ground, like depicting the railway that brought so many Jewish people away from their homes into an uncertain time for them, unknown as well. Then also a few modern pillars with a Jewish star, which, yeah, a nice moment to be there with yourself, very impressive. I'll get you to the boys' orphanage. As you probably saw from the aerial view, this is a round building. That is the part of the Stoppera, the opera. Beautiful. They also give tours to be backstage, and the square part, a little L shape, that is the city hall department. But in the ground here, you can see the lines of the building, and the building you can see on the photo of the boys' orphanage. And here's a little plaque, and it says that there was a Dutch Israeli boys' orphanage, and on March 5th the German occupation, the soldiers went into the orphanage, and about 100 boys were taken away to concentration camp, to the camp Sobibor. 3 of their carers, they joined in voluntarily, and well, in 1977 the building was broken down, but it has certainly a sad history, like many stories. And if you recognize the building on the old photos, then around the corner you see the very remarkable 2 towers of the Mozes Aaron Kerk, where you see the trolley that was a canal, and times have changed. And not for the better, except we have peace. But there's the Mozes Aaron Kerk, and for the looks, this was a totally different area than with one modern building. And behind here is a market called Waterlooplein Market, and the Waterloo Square is known for the flea market. It used to be a Jewish market where you could buy anything, and that tradition kind of kept going. The Waterloo Square, that's how it's called here. Actually, the square here used to be called Vlooienburg, this region, and Vlooienburg comes from flooding, because the river Amstel is next to us, and in this corner it's going that area, taking a left bend, an outside bend, it flooded often, and these were not the best living circumstances of the city. And then you talk about 17, 18, 1900s. There's even areas in the north of Amsterdam that was like the 20th century, and they were so swampy and watery that there was still malaria. My aunt had malaria as a baby right here in Amsterdam, so imagine how the circumstances were for the last centuries. All the way here at the end is one more Jewish memorial at the beautiful location, and there I'll end the walk. Here we come at the last point of the walk, and I'm standing next to this monument. It is a monument depicting the 2 commandments at the top, and it has Dutch and Hebrew letters, and it reminds, it wants to remember or commemorate all the Jewish people that worked in the resistance in 1945. And the stone itself, it's made from black granite, and the black granite was made by a gravestone sculptor from a town in Putten, it's near the Veluwe area. And he always made Jewish gravestones. Amazing to have that as a special profession, as a special, specialism to make Jewish gravestones. But he made this one, and it was put up in 1988 as a place to commemorate. You saw the flowers on the other side maybe, and May 4th there were commemoration as well here. A sad place to end a story of Amsterdam with a Jewish touch, and I hope you learned something new, saw some new places. I enjoyed taking you along. A bit lonely, but it was okay, and I even had my coffee, just like the real days. It is gorgeous out today. I hope you get to see Amsterdam live, walking along with this video, and not so much only from your couch, but if you're a guest, maybe being in America, it might be nice to see something back. And let's hope we meet again in the future and that we can walk together. I will add an extra bonus of the Amsterdam Diamond Factory. It's a little walk from here, not far, but then you've seen that as well. And for otherwise, I say thank you and goodbye. Thank you for joining. Bye. Coming from the monument, you may continue walking along here towards over the Waterloo Square, the flea market, which is closed today. But their stalls are beautifully decorated. I assume it displays what they normally are selling. Have a little look. Beautiful blue skies. The colorful houses on the other side. So this is like a permanent market. And the bad old joke is that you can buy anything here. Also bicycles, maybe stolen bicycles, and if you buy yours back, that's what we call recycling. Nice and colorful. So all the way to the end, you climb up the little stairs towards the bridge, turn right, and then I'll take you from there again towards the Diamond Factory. This is the heart of the Waterloo Square. The Zuiderkerk, 1614, made for the Protestants. And the top is wood covered with lead because natural stone will be too heavy on the swampy ground. And here we go, up the little stairs. We're now at the back of the Rembrandt house. Well, Saskia entered this door pretty frequently, and not me, but the wife of Rembrandt. This is where they lived, the Rembrandt house. And Rembrandt lived here, worked here until he went bankrupt. And the Rembrandt house is a place, a museum where they have not his paintings, but his etchings, work from his students. You can see his workplace, the house, a great museum. We pass it on our right hand. And then we take the next street left over there. So we continue and go there next to the HEMA store. We will take a left and then we'll be at the Diamond Place, the last little bonus. Well, we are now in this quiet street behind the Rembrandt house, and the Diamond Place is behind me. All warehouses. The corner in beautiful Amsterdam school architecture style with the little decorations, the special doors, the color of green paint, and then on the other side is Amsterdam diamonds. I'll show you as well on a photo. And the Diamond Place is a place that was special for the Jewish people. There you go. It looks almost like a city castle, doesn't it? The reflection of the windows. Amsterdam Diamonds was raised by the Jewish people. When they came, as said before, they could not join the existing guilds, the professions that were there, so they thought of new ones, banking, diamond cutting, and this is one of them. From here, also nearby, the Diamond Place founded the first union of the diamond cutters, and that was the first union in the world. And in 1894, they already managed to create an 8-hour workday and a 40-hour work week. Very unique, very good for its workers in that sense. And well, they still exist today, more than 125 years later. You can visit, visitors that way. And busloads come here normally. It's free to have a tour. I think it was free I was here in '94, a while ago, when I did my studies for being a guide. And they show you the whole process of how to cut diamonds from a rough diamond into a beautiful shiny jewel. And also from here, I think it was or a Jewish diamond or from Amsterdam, or even from here, it was the Koh-i-Noor, which is the one from that is now part of the English royal family, their jewelry, the Koh-i-Noor. Of course, after the tour you'll end up in the shop, so bring your credit card or just close your eyes and make your way to the exit. It's a little behind street, that is where we came from. To the right there is the Rembrandt house, the Waterloo Square straight on actually. And yeah, interesting. There's a little plaque even here on the wall. Let's see if that tells us something more. I bet you with the Q code you can find some more information. And here it says the Boas brothers put this diamond cutting company into operation in 1879. Oh, grinding. 357 grinders. That is many machines. It was the largest of its time in Europe. Steam generator, that's why they had the chimney. And yeah, the Jews dominated the diamond industry. And it was not surprising that the synagogue was even inside here. At the time there were dozens of diamond factories, and well, Hassan Diamond has continued the traditional purpose of this building since 1989. So amazing and beautiful, and there is the chimney. Well, this was the little bonus, and take care.